Absolute value inequalities, and versus or. An absolute value inequality is and if your inequality symbols are facing in this direction. They're pointing at the absolute value. But an easier way to think of it is that the inequality symbol eats the number, not the absolute value. As in this case, where the inequality is eating the 2. So all of these are examples of and. As you can see, it's greater than or equal to the 6. The absolute value inequality is eating the 2, not the absolute value. But even this one, which appears to be facing the wrong direction, is indeed an and statement. And I want you to think about why and what you must do before even solving this. Remember, we need to isolate the absolute value. So that negative 3 must go. And what happens when you divide by a negative 3? Well, you need to remember to flip the direction of the inequality sign. And when it all is said and done, now you can determine that it is an and statement. So what about or? An absolute value inequality is or if the opposite happens, if the inequality symbols are facing this direction. You want to think about it as the symbol is eating the absolute value. Now, what happens when you encounter both of these? Well, in the and statements, again, it's eating the number, but you are not allowed to determine if it's and or until you have isolated the absolute value. So don't be tricked by this negative 2 here. You can't decide if it's and or until this is gone. And in this case, we're going to divide by a negative and need to flip the sign. Whereas with the or, it eats the absolute value. But what happens if you forget which direction is and which is or? Well, there's a surefire way to tell which direction is and which is or, in case you forget. You're going to imagine a number line. And on this number line are normal positive numbers and normal negative numbers. You're going to drop in an inequality symbol. Now, reading from left to right, negatives are less than positives. Does your statement make sense? If reading from left to right, it makes sense, then it is definitely an and. So dropping that out, if your inequality symbol happens to be facing in this direction, just imagine the same number line. And again, read from left to right. Negative numbers are greater than positive numbers. Does that actually make sense? If not, then it's an or statement. So, all and statements with a solution, and that's important, can be written as a single statement. How is that helpful? Well, if you're given this situation where it's eating the 10, it's eating the number, solving it as a single statement makes for quicker solving, and it makes especially for easier graphing when you're finished. And so you would solve this situation. So let's take a brief second and see how that plays out. Given this inequality, the absolute value of x minus 6 is less than 10. Well, the inequality is eating the number, so this is an and statement, if you recall. So what we can do is we can write it as a single inequality. And what we want to do is we want to put another symbol facing the exact same direction as the original and put the opposite of the number. Given the inequality that we had, the absolute value of x minus 6 is less than 10. It is definitely an and statement. It is eating the number. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add in an inequality symbol, the same exact one that you see on the other side, facing the same direction, and we're going to solve for 10 and its opposite. Now, we do have to remember the transitive property, and we need to read this straight across. Negative 10 is less than 10. If that is true, this and statement has a solution, and now we can go about our business of solving it. we're going to rewrite the inequality without the absolute value bars. And we're going to solve for the 10 and the negative 10. We're going to add 6 to all parts of this inequality. So we'll add 6 here, in the middle to isolate the x, as well as over here where the 10 is. You must put it on all 3 portions. So once we've added 6 to all of these sides of the inequality, we're going to be left with negative 10 plus 6 is negative 4, which is less than x, which is less than 16. The beauty of this single and statement is that when we go to graph it, we're going to graph everything from negative 4 all the way to 16. We're going to put open circles because we do not have the equal symbol. And then we're just going to shade everything from negative 4 to 16. And it makes for easier solving. So hopefully this will help you to determine and or. And good luck with the homework.